you speak about mythology, the two mythologies that direct the Western thinking, the Western civilization. And one thing that I personally really, really liked about Dream of the Cosmos is that you propose, at least that's how I read it, that you propose that everything is connected. So when I dream, I can dream about the environment, the ecology. I can dream about the health of my tribe. And it's not all about me. Can you talk to us a bit more about those two powerful mythologies that direct the Western civilization?
Well, if you have life presented to you as a battle of good against
Yeah.
evil, that may condition you to think that the evil is out there somewhere and has to be fought against, rather than being a misunderstanding or lack of understanding to do with one's own inner nature. Everything has been projected out there. And so evil has been chased out there, so to speak. We're always looking for new enemies and we can fight. We're looking for new things. But on the positive side, we're looking for things that we can improve, not things that are evil, but things that need perhaps improving, like the way we care for the body, or the way we care for the psyche, or the way we care for the environment. So that in that sense, the battle to improve things is very positive. But in the other sense of projecting the evil out onto other people, and take the pilot, for instance, who crashed that Airbus.
Yeah.
He's not evil. He was unconscious, and also he was suffering from a deep, really almost psychotic depression.
Yeah.
He should have, the people who were caring for him in the hospital should have notified the Lufthansa or whoever, the German wings, that he had this condition. But he tore up the notes, and then he took all 149 people to their. But that wasn't a sin in the sense of being evil. It was a terrible, terrible outcome of his own unacknowledged problem, which he put out onto the world that was going to deprive him of this job because his eyesight was failing. So this shows you how careful we have to be before naming somebody as evil or bad. Unconscious, yes, but not evil or bad. So if one applies that to the whole culture, as it were, and how we are now engaged in yet another war situation in the Middle East, and how easy it would be to demonize the Muslims or demonize whoever really whom we want to project onto. We just have to be very, very careful to see what we're doing and look at what we've done to bring this situation into being over perhaps several hundred years.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. No. It's our fault as well as their fault.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get a more balanced position.
Yeah, it's carefully,
and you have
sown.
Carefully sown, and you have to be so careful because many, many people now on the internet are attacking other people with very horrible things, and children are being told that they're ugly or stupid or better to kill themselves or something. That is evil. Mm-hmm. That is evil because you're telling people to destroy themselves. You're attacking them. But it comes out of your own unconsciousness. So this is where we have to be very careful what we're doing. I've probably talked too much about that. So perhaps any other questions? So I think I've said the origin of misogyny comes from that myth of the fall. Yeah. It comes from the patriarchal situation, which started when we had settled communities about 10,000 BC, when we first began to gather into smaller communities and build villages and then towns. Then you had the father figure becoming predominant because he had to take that position. Whereas in the Paleolithic, you had equality between men and women because they were both engaged in the struggle for survival, and the men had to go out in the hunt and the women had to look after the people, the old people and the children who were left by the settlement, by the cave, so to speak. So you had a balance there, working together. There was no one being superior and the other being the servant or the inferior species at all. That comes in later in the Neolithic. Okay?
Yeah, and biology is settled that way, that women live longer because they have a very good job of taking care of the grandchildren. and that's good for the tribe. They have all this knowledge of the earth, and they can transpend that on the next generation.
That's right.
So it's also biological driven.
Yeah, it is, because women is closer to the earth. She's closer to the blood, so to speak, and the system of the body. Whereas men have been closer to developing in the course of these 4,000 or 5,000 years. They've developed more on the side of the intellect and the mind. And they've had a great contempt and also a fear of the body. They wanted to get away from the body, away from this darkness that was connected with woman. It's quite understandable. But they're coming out of it now, and many, many men are supporting women in wonderful ways. And this is what we want to see in our rising women, a rising world. We want to see men coming in to support the women who are speaking out and giving them the strength to speak out and encouraging and saying, well done. Okay.
Yes. So, when we go back, I want to go a step back to the steering wheel in your abdomen, because that image is so powerful for me, because women at the steering wheel is so important. I've done some meditations about steering wheel and driving myself. Would that dream of yours could that be a meditation for steering your own life, going your own way?
Well, I'm interested you saw it as a steering wheel, because I didn't see it as that. I saw it as a center of energy, that this was a center of energy that I was too unconscious of, and then I needed to become more conscious of and to connect with the gut, really. It was in the gut. So I needed to move my consciousness from being too much in the head, probably, to being right down in the body, and to make the body very important. But I like the idea of the steering wheel too, because I think one could use it. Yeah, a mandala. One can use it as a mandala, as a steering wheel, as taking charge of one's life, and also as getting help from this cosmic being that women are made in her image. They are made in her image, and so they need to be aware of how important their image is in relation to the cosmic ground, which has there as well.
And how that is always and always has been a part of the dwelling part of God inside of you, the God that is on earth instead of high in heaven.
Exactly. That everything is part of God. There is no separation anywhere. So we are participating in the being of God. All of us and all the life on this planet is a part of this enormous or gigantic entity that we can't really imagine, because it's so much beyond our capacity to imagine. But certainly women can take courage, I think, from my vision. And it was a vision which was not for me. It was for the whole world and for all women everywhere, that they should know that they are made in the image of this cosmic woman.
Yeah. And you've already mentioned that now that you got into the quantum science, you say there's this connection that is the soul. That there is really a cosmic soul.
Yeah, well, I call it the soul, but some people call it the field. Some call it dark energy or dark matter. It has different names. Some call it akasha. But in the science course, they were calling it the quantum plenum, which is full of this, so much energy that even the tiniest part would fill the whole universe if you could get hold of a piece of it. I've got some of this on my website called A New Vision of Reality, or A New Vision, I think, I can't remember. But anyway, I gave them the principal new understanding that is coming through there. The principal statements about this are on my website. So I was so excited by this, and also it's so fascinating because it all goes down to tiny Planck units. Planck was a great scientist who discovered the quantum unit. And these tiny little Planck units are all together in the shape of a star tetrahedron onto the surface of a proton. And all these protons are what we are and what the universe is. But the minute form of matter which is clinging to the proton is so small that it's like the eye of a flea in relation to the whole universe, if you can imagine such a tiny thing. So this is what it was exciting me to show me that what I call cosmic soul is in fact this vibrating, because it vibrates all the time. It's a vibrating ground of the whole universe. This is what sustains us, this ground. This is what keeps us alive when we're on this planet. And this is what keeps us alive when we move on to, I think, other universes when we die.
Yeah.
And death should not be frightening to us. That was another thing I forgot to mention, that we have to create a totally new image of death. You know, in the Christian tradition, you're taught that you wait until the day of resurrection before you can, your body can be resurrected. Yeah. But I think this is a terrible mistake, because it gives you the idea that you're going to be stuck somewhere waiting for this day of resurrection.
Yeah.
When really, when we move into this other world, we move into soul bodies, and we carry the consciousness we have here, but we take it into another dimension,
yeah,
where we live in a different way, obviously, with not physical bodies. But the fear of death really is something that needs to be dispensed with, so we don't go through this terrible grief when, like, for instance, those poor people who've died in that crash, that they will think perhaps that they will never see their relatives again, and this is wrong. They will see them again. And I think all people who've lost their parents or their children or their partners should know that they will see them again. And I've had one of my clients who lost her husband very suddenly, and she has done a huge amount of research into this whole field, and she passes it on to me. And there's no question in my mind, and I put it in a whole chapter of my book, that our life continues after the death of the physical body. So
yes,
I'm glad.
And you can feel it too in your body and in your dreams. I can feel the wisdom of my father and my mother, and they are talking to me when I come at rest, when I have problems, and I talk with them in my head.
And they're there. They're right.
Answer. Yeah.
And I found that the people who helped me writing my book were not only my mother and father and my grandmother, but also many other people whose books I have discovered who are now dead, even long dead philosophers. And they were all there helping. They wanted to get us through and kept saying, well, look at this and look at that and find this passage here and put it into the book. And I really got so much help from the other side that I absolutely trust the fact that they exist. And they're not gone forever at all.
Yeah.
And that's very encouraging, because you live your life differently. You don't live your life in fear. You live it in trust.
Yeah. And you feel connected through the generations that were there and the generations that will become.
Exactly. Yes, you do. Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe this is all about steering your wheel in a more conscious way.
Yeah. Well, I like the way that you empower us to embrace the darkness, the shadow, that you say, well, there is dark matter in the universe, and that might be the most powerful creative force we have ever known. So maybe we should look into our own shadow and see how the power within us can be integrated to become consciousness, to become more conscious.
Yeah, I think that's terribly important. I have 2 chapters in the book, one on the shadow and one on war, because I think that the whole idea of killing other people's bodies is actually the truest and greatest sin, because the bodies are something sacred. There's something absolutely miraculous about the creation of the body, what it is. There are 100 trillion atoms in our body, and I don't know what, just extraordinary composite entity that we are, a miraculous entity. And to go and kill that and destroy it with weapons and with explosives, to me, is a terrible crime. And I feel very, very strongly about the fact of nuclear weapons being really evil.
Yeah.
I think we need to get rid of all these terrible weapons. And there's a whole thing on my website about nuclear weapons, and also nuclear reactors, the danger connecting with, for instance, Fukushima, and the fact that human error and nature can create a situation where there is terrible danger for the whole planet with these nuclear reactors.
Yeah.
So I would say this is part of our shadow, part of the desire for power over nature, because we felt helpless and we didn't know why we were here. So we thought we have to have more and more means of protecting ourselves against other people. But the more we do that, the more we fall into the negative shadow, really, of the whole culture. And we just go on in the same tracks instead of changing the pattern and realizing what we're doing in the shadow, what we're not conscious enough of, because the shadow really means what we're not conscious of. How we've brought these weapons into being because of fear of an enemy, and how they proliferated, got more and more countries. 9 countries now have them, and we have the question with Iran having them as well, which would put the whole of the Middle East into a state of apoplexy, with terror, really. So these things are not good, and there have been methods of decommissioning them, but they got nowhere, because there's always the resistance of America and the United Kingdom, I'm ashamed to say, who block it. And it doesn't make the non-proliferation treaties don't make any progress. This is something that women can do. They have to say, enough is enough. We've had enough of this terrible slaughter, all these weapons, and preparing endlessly for more wars. We preserve life with our bodies. We carry life. We look after it, and we're not going to see it destroyed in these wars. It's an outrage against all that women have brought into being. It's an absolute outrage. And I think that voice needs to be heard as women become more and more aware of what the shadow of our civilization has been carrying, and how unconscious we have been of the evil we've brought into being. Thinking that it was good, thinking that it was protecting the small units of our nations, but not looking at the whole. Okay?
Yes, I can remember when I was pregnant. I have 2 boys, and that when the news said so and so got shot, or there's a war, that it really hit my pregnant belly. That I said, oh no, oh please, somebody had that man you shot and cared for him, and oh God, what a grief. So this really, really resonates with me, what you're saying.
I felt it so deeply every time I hear of some poor young man shot, and not one man, but hundreds shot. I think, what are the mothers feeling that brought this life up, that fed it and cared for it and loved it, and in a moment that life is just gone, evaporated. It's terrible, and we have brought this into being. We are responsible for all these terrible things. It's gone on for 4,000 years now, but we can bring it to a stop if we get together enough, I think, enough women, and with enough men behind us saying, we agree with you and it must stop.
Yeah. Is there a question I haven't asked you that you really want to address?
I don't think so. I think we've covered more than I thought we would cover, and perhaps more than you thought we would cover. But perhaps if it's nearly time to end, I could end with those 4 questions that you thought, is it about time, do you think?
Yes, because thank you all for listening to us, and please visit www.nbearing.com, and you can read all about Dream of the Cosmos, and please do buy this book, because it will change your life and change the way you perceive things. And there are 4 questions in that book that are so powerful that I really would like to ask Anne to end with those questions, so you can reminisce about them.
All right, so here are the 4 questions. How do we recover our lost sense of being something, part of something that is totally sacred? That we live on a sacred planet. How do we develop respect and compassion for the life on Earth in all its forms? How do we find ways of meeting the deepest needs of the human heart for love, relatedness, and connection? And finally, how do we relinquish the beliefs and patterns of behavior that have been so damaging to the soul as well as to the planet? And how do we do this fairly quickly, because there isn't much time to bring about this change? So thank you so much, Suzanne. I've really, really enjoyed this interview, and I hope it will reach out to many people And I hope that people will find that my book will take them on a journey so that gradually they will understand as they read the book what's happened in the past, what needs to change, and what needs to be brought in to have a better future for all our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Anne. Thank you for being here.